chiller is on, exhaust is sucking. Let's do got a new machine for the shop. Let's get this thing unloaded, see what the f it is. Hey everybody, Kyle here with Spicer Designs. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you. Now this unit came from Monport. They got this thing crated up pretty good. So we're going to unbox this thing very carefully and see what we got inside. Well, that came apart pretty easy, I gotta say. Let's go ahead and finish unpacking this thing, and we'll get it wheeled over to its new home here in the Spicer Design shop, and we'll figure out what the hell this thing is. Now before we fire up the Monport 60 watt CO2 laser, I want to take a minute and talk about some of the general specifications on this unit and what kind of requirements you're going to need to go ahead and run this thing in your shop or garage or wherever the hell you want to put it. Now we'll talk about all this stuff here in a minute, but first I just want to put this unit in perspective with what you're used to seeing on this channel, which is a desktop diode laser. So if you have been following along with the channel, you may have seen this desktop laser in a couple of videos. It's fairly small, pretty compact. It's a diode laser, doesn't require a lot of power. This thing is obviously a whole lot different. Now this Ortour unit has a 10 watt diode laser, where this particular Monport laser has a 60 watt CO2 laser. Now there are a couple of requirements that you'll need to run this unit. Let me show you what they are. Now the CO2 style laser has a CO2 tube, which you can see right here, and that requires some cooling. So if you buy one of these Monport units, it will actually come with this blue tub in it. It comes with all of the waterline hoses that you need, and it actually comes with a submersible pump. So in this situation, you would put your water in this blue container, and you would use that to cycle through that CO2 tube to keep it cool. Now the only downfall of this setup is that you have to maintain that water temperature right around 60 to 70 degrees. So you may have to put some ice in there or constantly be changing that water out. And as far as the water goes, it does require that you use distilled water. You don't want to have any kind of mineral buildup inside of that CO2 tube. It could cause damage and become a little bit of a nightmare. So in my opinion, the best route to go with a laser like this is either an external or internal chiller unit. And Monport offers both options. So what they sent out was the external chiller, and you can see right here, this is the Monport CW5200 industrial chiller, and you can set the temperature on this so it'll actually maintain that 60 to 70 degree water temperature. And this only requires a 120 volt circuit. This unit draws about 3.5 to 5 amps. So in a minute here, we're gonna get all this distilled water in it. We're gonna go ahead and hook up the water lines so we can get this chiller all set up and get us one step closer to firing up this laser. This thing is on casters, which is pretty nice. So the second requirement that you're gonna need is some kind of an exhaust. Now Monport already has a pretty good handle on this. They have a built-in exhaust fan and a 6-inch exhaust port right here. And they give you a section of 6-inch flex duct where you can go ahead and connect that and tap it into your exhaust system or vent it outside. Now when we do fire this thing up, I do not have my exhaust system in place in my shop yet, so I'm going to basically kind of vent that outside, but this is something that you'll need to consider if you do want to go ahead and get one of these units. Now the last requirement that you're going to need for this Monport laser is again a 120 volt circuit. The power consumption on this 60 watt laser is about 650 watts, which equals out to somewhere around 5.5 amps of 120 volts. So theoretically, we should be able to easily have the laser and the chiller both on the same 120 volt circuit, preferably a 20 amp, which in our situation, we're already set up for that. Now, I don't want to bore you with all these details, but if there's someone that's interested in this laser, I do want to make sure I share this information with you. And this is going to be the initial introduction of this laser on the Spicer Designs channel. So once we get past this, the future videos will be more actually doing projects on it and seeing exactly what this thing is capable of. So now let's talk about a couple of the actual details on this laser. First off, like I said, this is a 60 watt CO2 laser. They do offer it in higher wattages, and I believe they even go down to a 40 as well. They've got a handful of different units on their website, which of course I will have linked in the description. Now the physical dimensions on this laser, it's 48 inches wide by 36 inches deep by 36 inches tall. And this particular 60 watt laser weighs approximately 385 pounds. Yeah, there's no way that's 400 pounds. I am pretty strong too. I mean, you know. Oh, I'm an idiot. And you probably noticed that it does come with casters, and it also comes with adjustable feet so you can actually plant this thing onto the floor and get it leveled up for a more permanent setting. You can see here, of course, it came with the power cord. You've got your USB cable, came with some glasses to protect your eyes, which are very important. So when you take them off.
Where are you?
Right down here. Comes with an Allen wrench toolkit and the key for all of your access doors. Let's go ahead and open this thing up, see what the inside looks like. You can see this laser head looks a little bit different than what we're used to with the diode laser, because all this is basically a bunch of mirrors. All these mirrors reflect and they go out back to the CO2 tube. Now right here we have our manual adjustment, which brings the bed height up and down. So as we turn this, the bed will start to raise, turn it the other way, and it will lower, and that's how we're going to use our manual focus. Now the cut dimensions on this are 20 inches deep by 28 inches wide. That's the largest piece of material that we could put inside of there and cut on. But there is one cool feature. This actually has another access door right here that you can open, and with this closed, you can actually slide material in and out of here if it's a little bit longer. So if you had, say, a long piece of milled lumber that you wanted to run through this thing, there's an access door in the front and in the back, so you could actually engrave in segments and run it all the way through this thing. Now I keep talking about this damn CO2 laser. Let's flip this thing around and just see what the hell it is. All right, now we're on the back side of the unit. You can see down here we've got our hookups for the chiller. It's just an inlet and an outlet, pretty easy to hook up. And then you've got some other access doors that gets you into all the spaces if you need to make any adjustments. But here is the heart of this machine. There it is, the flux capacitor. I mean, the CO2 laser. Sorry, I just watched Back to the Future. All right, let's take a look at this thing. You can see our two chiller tubes. Basically, we're sending water up through here, and it's gonna cycle through this tube to keep that tube cool. I know I just said tube a lot right there, but it's a tube. And then you can see some of our power connections coming up here. I'm not sure exactly how this CO2 laser works, and then it shoots that laser into this mirror right here. And then if you look through, maybe hard to see, there's another mirror straight ahead right there. So that laser will shoot into this one, it will reflect at a 45-degree angle, shoot into that other mirror, and then coming around inside of the laser, there's that other mirror I was just pointing to. It will reflect off of there, come over to the laser head, reflect off of another mirror, and then shoot down into your material. Kind of a crazy setup, but these things are powerful machines, and I'm really curious to see what kind of material this thing will cut. Now, one thing to keep in mind about the CO2 laser, they recommend that you do not run this thing over 70% power for any long period of time. If you do need to run it over the 70%, they recommend that you limit that time as much as possible, because it will wear down the life of that CO2 tube. Now the lifespan on this CO2 tube is anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 hours. And I'm not sure exactly what the replacement cost is on one of these. I can find out and leave that somewhere in the description. And the other thing that they caution in the manual is to not run the 60 watt laser for any longer than 3.5 hours at a time, because basically the unit gets probably too hot and needs to cool down, take a little bit of a break. So if you plan on doing a lot of work with this thing, 3.5 hours at a time is max according to the manual. And that pretty much covers all of the main specs on this thing. Those are kind of all the need to knows. And I am not an expert with CO2 lasers, and hell, I'm not an expert with diode lasers either. I'm still learning. They're really cool units, and you could do so many different things with these things. Let's get this chiller hooked up, get some water in it, and get this thing fired up so we can start doing some projects. I armor-alled it. All right, we are finally all set up. We have everything hooked up and ready to finally test this thing out. So you can see right here, I've got my laptop set up. I've got the Monport laser plugged in to a 120 volt outlet. I've got the chiller filled up with distilled water. It's all plumbed into the back of the Monport laser, and it is powered up and running right now, and it is circulating cool water through that CO2 tube. And then right here, you can see I have a little bit of a makeshift exhaust system, and I'm gonna show you that right now. So coming right out of the side of the Monport, there is a built-in exhaust fan, so it's pushing the air out. So we're coming down through the 6-inch flex tube, and don't mind all this junk over here, this is all stuff that I'm selling. Right here I have an inline duct fan. This actually was in my house. The old previous owners built some kind of an apparatus that sucked air from the basement, I don't know. But this thing is actually a 400 CFM with a variable drive on it. And basically I'm repurposing it for an exhaust system. And eventually that inline fan is going to go up in the attic of the barn. And I'm gonna come down with some 6-inch spiral duct to a T and go both ways all the way across the side of the shop. And from there I'll have multiple drops with shutoffs for each piece of equipment. But for now, I've got it running outside underneath the garage door. I got it plugged in right there. And then there's a cable that comes from there. I just have it sitting here. This is all temporary. And there is a little controller where we can control the speed of the fan. And I turned it on and tried it out, and this thing sucks some serious air. So it's gonna work great for what I'm doing here. Now I can't stress enough how important it is to have that exhaust system set up. This thing will pump out a lot of fumes and a lot of smoke. And if I do any amount of cuts in this shop, it's gonna fill up with smoke really quick and become very uncomfortable. Now the next thing on hooking this machine up to your laptop, this is very important. I actually struggled with this for a couple of days. There's not a ton of information on YouTube or the internet about these Monport lasers. So hopefully if you're looking into one of these things, this video will be helpful. There are two different ways that you can hook this thing up. You have your USB cable, which is pretty common, and you have an Ethernet cable. The Monport laser comes with both cables. You don't need to buy them. Down here on the machine, it'll show right there your USB hookup and your Ethernet hookup, and then you also have an input where you could put a flash drive with the file already on it, and then you could use the interface on the laser to actually do your cuts. So you don't technically have to hook your laptop up to this laser. I prefer to control the laser from my laptop, so that's how I'm doing it. Now if you have a Windows-based laptop or PC, the USB, you should be able to hook this thing up, and it should detect this laser without any issues. If you have a MacBook, like myself, the USB doesn't work so well. As a matter of fact, I don't know if the USB works at all. For whatever reason, there's issues with this Ryuta, or Ryida, whatever kind of controller this is, and Macs. So I had to opt to the Ethernet connection. Now in order to do this with the Ethernet cable, you have to get into the terminal part of your computer where you can then find the active IP address for your computer. So once you find the active IP address in your computer, it's gonna be 4 sections of 3 numbers. What you're gonna wanna do is take the first 3 sections, and you're gonna wanna go into your IP configuration on your laser. You're gonna wanna change the IP address to match the first 3 sections of your MacBook, and then the last section of 3 digits, you're gonna change them so they don't match your computer. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'm gonna leave a link that explains everything to a T. It's what I used. I'll leave that link down in the description. And once you do all that, then you can actually go in on Lightburn, manually set up the device, and it will recognize it. I finally got it to work, so pretty happy about that. And listen, you do not have to be super tech savvy and really good with computers. I definitely am not, and I figured it out. The next very important thing you need to know if you want to use light burn with this CO2 laser, you are going to need a DSP license. On the smaller desktop lasers, all you need is a G-code license from Lightburn, but this one, you need the DSP. The DSP license is going to run you $120, but that DSP license also covers the G-code license. So once you get that, you'll be covered for both the DSP and the G-code. Now I'm not going to get into all those details. That's a whole nother video. If there's a lot of people that are struggling with this, let me know in the comments and I will make a separate video on how to set up the DSP machine and all the licensing and all that crap. But for now, I just want to try out this laser. All right, so we're going to need some things to engrave on, and we're going to use the Langmuir Crossfire Pro CNC plasma table to cut out some test plates out of mild steel. And like always, I will have links and a discount code for the Langmuir table down in the description below. I really want to try out some mild steel with some different coatings on it, pretty much spray paint, different colors, because that laser engraver is something that I really want to start incorporating into some of my CNC metalwork. So let's get this cut out already so we can get started on the new Monport. Let's pick out some colors. Ooh, what do we have here? Let's do some satin white, maybe some John Deere green. Got to use this paint on something. And I do a lot of flat black stuff. I'm just curious if we'll be able to even see with some flat black. All right, I'm gonna get these things painted up so we can get started. Okay, here we have all the material that we're gonna be testing out today on the Monport 60-watt CO2 laser. First thing we're gonna try is to do some engraving on just a piece of construction lumber. I've got some leather. This is about 1/8 of an inch thick. And we've got the mild steel test plates that we cut on the CNC plasma table. These are 14 gauge steel. Definitely not gonna cut through this, but we're gonna see how well it does engraving on it. This is hot rolled mild steel, so it does have that coating on it. And then our other 3 test plates, we've got a satin white, a flat black, and a gloss John Deere green. We're gonna see how it does with a spray painted surface on that mild steel. Now, if you caught the video I did with Adam over at Hometown Acres, we tried out his new 40-watt diode laser and we did some engraving on mild steel that was powder coated, and the finish on that turned out great. Now, the amount of stuff that we can cut and engrave with this laser is endless. There are so many different materials out there. This is just kind of the tip of the iceberg here. And I will say, in the Monport manual, there's actually a couple sections in here that give you all the power and speed settings for different types of material and the thicknesses. Now, those settings aren't 100% perfect, but it'll get you real close, at least to get started, to do a couple of test pieces. So it's pretty handy to have. Let's get this piece of construction lumber in there. We're gonna do that same small YouTube logo that we did over at Hometown Acres and see how it turns out. All right, we got our material sitting inside the laser here. Everything is off. They give you this little gauge right here to put in between the bottom of the laser head and the material that you're cutting or engraving on. So we're gonna go ahead and lower the bed down so we can slide that material underneath the laser. And then we want to have our gauge sitting vertical. And as soon as we could fit that thing underneath that head, we know that that is the correct distance to start engraving.
Ah! Damn it!
All right, you can see there's a little laser in there. It's actually got a nice little feature with a separate laser that gives you an actual pinpoint of where the origin is, but that's not the actual laser that cuts, of course. So we're just gonna go ahead and move this thing over a little bit. Right up to the top right corner. And we're gonna set our origin right there. Sorry for the whole laundry day. I know I look like a hillbilly, mostly because I am.
Yeah!
All right, we are about to hit the start button. Before we do that, I do want to stress safety. These laser engravers, whether it's a diode laser or a CO2 laser, are extremely dangerous. That laser can be detrimental to your eyesight. So it's very important that you wear the safety goggles, and just in general, try not to look at the laser or be around it, because if it were to reflect, it could be very dangerous. What I recommend is reading the manual so that you make sure you look at all the safety precautions from the manufacturer. And along with that, I also like to have a fire blanket, a first aid kit, and I have fire extinguishers in 2 locations in the shop in case something were to happen. But this is considered a fireproof enclosure, but you can never count on that, so always be prepared. enough of all that. Let's fire this laser up. Oh, damn it! Freaking Craftsman stool. Can't see. All right, laser head is on, chiller is on, exhaust is sucking. Let's do it. That's about how fast the laser's going. Hopefully you can see all that smoke in there. There is no smoke in the shop, nice and clean. And what I'll do now that it's stopped is I'll let that fan suck all that smoke out, and then we'll go ahead and open this thing up. It's got a nice LED light back there, pretty handy. Looks like it did a pretty good job. You can feel the sap in the wood. That went down maybe a 32nd of an inch. That was at about 45% power and 900 inches per minute. Got us about 30-second beep, so pretty good. And that only took about maybe 2 minutes, so pretty efficient. All right, now what I want to do is I want to do an engraving on these mild steel test plates that we made. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to have a separate rectangle that is the exact dimensions of this test plate, which is 2 inches tall by 5 inches wide. So we're gonna make a line all the way around in the wood. We'll set our origin, and then we'll place this right inside that. That way when we put the YouTube logo on there, it's perfectly centered on our test plate. And engrave our rectangle. That's it, super easy. All right, we're gonna kill the laser head. And now we've got a 2 by 5 square, and that's exactly where we're going to set our test plate so that we can get that logo perfectly engraved. Turn our laser head back on. Pretty good. We'll check this out a little bit later at the end of the video. Now, the John Deere green. Next, the flat black. And last, the mild steel with that hot rolled mill coating on it. All right, we got all of our coated mild steel pieces engraved. Had some pretty interesting results on that, which we'll look at here in a little bit. After further reading the manual and some of the warning labels on the machine, it clearly states this machine is not designed to engrave on metallic surfaces. Ideally, if you're going to engrave on metal, it needs to have some kind of a coating on it, whether it's powder coated, painted, or anodized. So now we're going to give it a try at a piece of 1/8 inch thick leather. We're going to do an engraving on this, and then we're going to cut the leather out. We're going to do one of the leather coasters for the Spicer Designs logo. I did this before in one of my previous videos. We'll see how the Monport does with it. I'm gonna engrave me some assless chaps with this thing. Need more leather. Absolutely no use for any of this stuff. Maybe the coaster for my keystones. All right, we are all done engraving, but let's take a look at how good that laser did on these other materials. So first off, with the construction lumber, did a really good job. Got a nice deep burn on it, about a good 32nd of an inch. And keep in mind, all of these settings, power settings, speed settings, they can all be adjusted and fine-tuned. This is my first time using this machine, so I'm not very familiar with all the settings on different materials. Next, we got our mild steel. The white one was the first one we did. This is just white spray paint. It did a really good job. It burned right through that paint, down to the metal, and it looks nice and clean and crisp. Same with the green, and it actually got a really cool result with the flat black. It has kind of a cool, like, graphite look to it. Might be a nice effect on some of the signs that I do on the CNC plasma table. And as far as the mild steel with just that hot rolled coating, I can see the engraving on it. It's not super clear. I probably could crank up the power a little bit or maybe do a second pass or a third pass to get the result that I wanted. But I wanted to see one pass on all of these so they were all the same. Now on the piece of leather, it did a great job cutting it. I actually used the recommended power and speed settings from the manual. They were a little bit light on their settings there. I wasn't getting the results that I wanted, so I did crank up the power a little bit. As far as the engraving, when I cleaned it off with Simple Green, kind of got all that charring out of the engraved section, so you really can't see it that well. I would prefer to do a little bit deeper of a burn on the leather and leave that charring in there. But again, it's just something I gotta mess with and get more familiar with this laser. All right, so that is gonna wrap this video up. Just a bit of an introduction for the Monport laser to our channel. I'm definitely gonna be using this laser a lot more, and hopefully I can incorporate it into my CNC metalwork. I will have links for this machine and the chiller. And if you use promo code Spicer Designs, it will save you 10% off your purchase, which is pretty damn significant. Monport also sent me a rotary tool, so we're gonna be testing this thing out in the future as well. So if you wanna see more on this Monport laser, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. Now I gotta say, this thing is pretty badass. I love the fireproof enclosure, I love the exhaust system, the chiller, the amount of power that it has, and I like the bigger cutting platform. So I could definitely see this tool becoming a major part of the operation over here at Spicer Designs. So if you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Make sure my fingers are not in there. Perfect. An air conditioner. If I have to go through all that bullshit again. Blah.